3:05. Kathleen is gonna come over and,
3:06.
okay, we'll be, being 3:06.
Do we have a quorum? Yes?
Yes. We have present John Duggan, Wayne Sampson, Peter Holmes, MJ Mastrangelo, 1, 2, 3, 4, Keith Barber, 5 here,
Hello?
and
Hello?
2 on Zoom. Oh, did I leave you out? Kathy Fox Alfano. I can't count. 6. And then on Zoom, we have Chris Hilberg and Neil Langiel. But, oh, hi Neil, is that you? He's unmuted now. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to read my my little thing here. Note, this meeting is being televised, streamed, or recorded by Bourne TV. If anyone in the audience is recording or videotaping, they need to acknowledge such at this time. Use of flash photography during wastewater advisory committee meetings is prohibited. If anyone from the audience wishes to access the meeting, they can do so by calling the conference line, 1-929-205-6099. The Zoom meeting ID is 841-0124-3956. The password is all capitals WAC. Zoom chat will not be monitored. Participants who wish to speak must raise the hand icon until the chair asks them to unmute. Hi, Kathleen.
Whack. We're a bunch of wackos.
And so it's 3:06, I've called the meeting to order. And so, excused are Marlene, Chris Hilberg is here. He's on Zoom. Well, eventually you'll see that.
I thought Heidelberg was.
Chris Hilberg. Oh, I don't know.
He's on Zoom.
Oh, he's on Zoom?
Yes, Chris Hilberg is on Zoom.
And Neil is
Yeah.
on Zoom.
Oh, great.
And Neil
Neil's
is on Zoom. So we have
Excellent.
8.
Great.
And
fabulous.
then
And we don't have a.
Marlene
And we don't have a Board of Health person.
and Board of Health is
Open.
open. There are 9 or 10 people?
9. I think it is. Can anyone think of anybody who's missing? I think that's it.
I came last week.
I know. And John thought he missed it because he thought today was Wednesday.
I had.
We're good.
Got the meeting ID, I have it.
Yes.
Running
You
here,
ready?
and there was nobody here. I was saying,
Hold on.
what did I even, then I read
Okay.
again, and it was the wrong day.
Okay. 841-0124-3956. Password is caps, WAC. No charge.
Bunch of wackos.
I think you're gonna have to mute that, and I think hopefully the sound from my computer will pick up on.
There you are.
Okay, do you want to try talking?
Can you all hear me on? You have to.
Oh, no.
You have to mute that. Because I don't think it will pick up.
Should we mute the TV? Could that be it?
We have too much feedback.
Feedback. Feedback.
Maybe you should mute the doors. No. 'Cause you are muted. This is muted.
Okay.
If you think it's hot out, it's 6 months till Christmas.
So that would have to be unmuted though then,
There's always
Kathleen?
one in the crowd. My aunt used to do a Christmas shopping.
Wait, there's something
Still
reverberating.
hearing an echo, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead, MJ.
Well, can you, is that all right now?
Hello?
Can you hear me now? Is it,
Chris, can you hear us?
I,
is muted.
Is that muted?
Sorry, folks.
I can hear you, but it sounds to me like there's still a bit of an echo.
You want me to try turning it on?
Want to try shutting your computer off? MJ?
It's the old Nixon joke.
So-
I'm not a criminal.
So is there a conflict between the speaker and the laptop? You have a microphone right in front of you. Do we need one or the other?
I have turned off mine.
Can you hear us, Chris?
Chris, can you hear us?
Is there sound on the,
Hello,
we
Chris.
usually put those out, yeah.
Chris is muted. I can see it in the lower left corner of his screen.
Oh, he's muted.
Yeah, see it in the
This
lower
might
left
have been the
corner?
problem.
Yeah, I just turned them off. They were on.
Yeah, but they,
Do you want them on?
yeah, because that's how you can hear.
Okay, Chris, can you hear us?
Hello, Chris.
How are you logged on here? Is this unmuted now or not? This has to be on, I think, now, because I've turned mine
How about Neil?
Where is, oh, Neil's on the
Neil's the
It
phone.
is on.
Can you hear us, Neil?
Green light.
Can you hear us? Anybody?
Oh,
He's talking on the left, so.
here we go.
Chris is talking?
I hear nothing.
Chris, can you hear us?
Did you turn these back on again?
Yep, they're on. Turn them off by, that's all. There's no, wait.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
Oh, you can. Can you hear us? Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Great.
There.
Hooray.
Sorry.
I-
We just
how about
didn't-
Neil?
We just didn't have anybody responding. Okay. We were doing it.
All right, I had to put this back to you because I'm no longer here. And I don't want to log on and I'll just,
That's fine. Just end the meeting here.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
all good to go.
okay. All right then.
Thanks for saving us.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I didn't. You saved yourselves.
don't count,
That good.
don't count on
With
it.
your help.
That good.
Oh,
Have a good meeting.
Okey dokey. All right then. The next item on the agenda is discuss the draft comprehensive wastewater management plan. And I sent this way in advance of the meeting, and it wasn't in the packet. So,
Okay.
does anyone have any thoughts they want to share about the comprehensive wastewater management plan?
I was surprised to see sewering come back in.
Soaring's back, yep.
The reason it's back in, it's not really back in as an alternative, but if we're gonna go to town meeting and they're gonna ask us why we're not doing sewering, or if, what it would cost to say, this, it is an alternative. And when we originally started talking about this, it was the conventional alternative. And then DEP said that they would accept general use IA systems as conventional. So they totally took sewering out. But the select board said, how are we going to explain why we're not doing sewering if we don't have it as an alternative in the plan?
Okay.
That's good argument, yep.
What does the DEP mean when they say they'll accept an IA system as conventional?
So when we started this process and the position of DEP prior to Bourne, talking about wanting to use general use IA systems as our comprehensive wastewater management plan, they required the town to have a sewer alternative as the conventional alternative. We were able, in the town of Bourne, with the exception of the Buttermilk Bay watershed, to have general use IA systems meet the required TMDL for the two watersheds that have a TMDL, and to provide for a 25% reduction in nitrogen for the watersheds that don't have a TMDL. And in Buttermilk Bay, we looked at a partial sewering alternative that they then kind of said that they thought we should do pilot, advanced IAs. But that watershed doesn't even have a TMDL yet. So they're not, it's
Future.
Off in the future.
it's kind of in the future, and so and one of the things that they didn't do is really explore connecting to Wareham for the 100,000 gallons per day for Buttermilk Bay, because it would seem to me, they started talking about expanding our existing wastewater treatment plant. And it's not expandable. The leaching fields are currently permitted at 3 gallons per minute or whatever that thing is. And sometimes they'll go up to 6. So there's a possibility you could increase the leaching field capacity. But within the building itself, there isn't room to put another train in to double the capacity of that plant. And so, and even if there were, you'd probably do leaching underneath the ball field instead of up trying to around the police station where it's already done. So, so they didn't look at that. And I don't know if it's now in the plan. I don't even know what the date of that plan is. When did I send that out?
This is May 31st.
May 31st, 2024. Draft recommended plan. Town of Bourne. Environmental partners.
And they did change, so we had a meeting, there was a meeting with environmental partners and the Board of Selectmen, I want to say in April, and that's where the questions about why, how are we going to explain why we're not sewering? Because I still get that question from people, why aren't we sewering? And to be able to explain that it kind of doesn't really make sense.
Has there been discussion about approaching the base for some land for a second treatment facility to cover south of the bridge?
So we did some initial talks with Joint Base Cape Cod for capacity at the Joint Base Cape Cod. It doesn't really help us sewer the areas that we need to sewer. It would be so far to pipe all the way. When we were doing the wastewater treatment plant down here, we talked about putting a wastewater treatment plant up by Bournedale School because we own a lot of land up there. And they said, well, the cost of piping and pumping it up there would be,
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It's like the highest point
It's
in
kind
town.
of like trying to use Joint Base Cape Cod for sewering for our needs. What are you going to do from Monument Beach up to Joint Base Cape Cod? It's too far. It just doesn't make sense. As opposed to Sandwich, which has a lot of area right near the base that they could tie into. So they're really talking to the base about tying in for wastewater there. And we didn't go deep into it because it didn't seem to be a
Right.
viable alternative.
Like we said, it would be so uphill from Monument Beach or Pecasset that it makes no sense to do. And it's on the far side of the base. If it was right, in the beginning, like where I swim is or something, that's different. It's all the way at the other
The
end.
other end.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's near Mashpee and Sandwich.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Wayne?
has any official study been done on just sewering the town? Or is it all bits and pieces in different studies?
When this committee looked did the alternatives analysis, which is an alternatives analysis document that was discussed back in October of 2022, sewering was not the preferred alternative. It was not identified as a preferred alternative.
Right.
And don't forget, most of the town doesn't need sewering because we're not in a high TMDL. So we don't have to do it. So where we don't have high TMDL, we're not doing anything at the moment. There may be other places coming on, like we were talking about Hens Cove and Little Buttermilk Bay and whatever, but for right now, there's no need to do it. So it'd be a very expensive thing to do, too.
We just know that the capacity of the professionals in the industry would never be able to meet the 5-year or, anywhere near 300 systems a year.
Well, if
Whether
we
it's-
get a watershed permit, then the 5-year, then that
Right,
goes
but-
away.
That goes
Right.
away, yeah.
Yeah, so, however, that,
That goes away.
the 5 years, right? The question of who enforces the 5-year permit? It's not a Bourne regulation. It's a Mass DEP regulation. So, I mean, they can say you have to replace your system in 7 years. It's 2 years plus 5 years. If that doesn't happen, what's gonna happen? Who's gonna enforce it? What are they gonna do? I mean, even if you have a septic system and it would be helpful to have a Board of Health person, but even if you have a septic system, if it fails and you go to the Board of Health and you say, I need 2 years to get it fixed, what do they say? You get 2 years to get it fixed. So, and this is one of the big questions with the watershed permit. So Bourne right now is the only town on the Cape that has not applied for a watershed permit. But the reason that we haven't applied for a watershed permit is we're not sewering. So if your plan for comprehensive wastewater management is sewering,
Right.
you don't want to force people
Right.
to put in new Title V systems because they're going to be tied into sewer.
Right.
If your plan is not to sewer, but to use
Kyle.
Title V systems, wouldn't you want people to start putting in those fives? Wouldn't you want all new construction to have Title V systems?
Yes.
I general use IA systems. Wouldn't you want any septic system that has to be replaced or any house that changes over to start the implementation? If the plan is actually going to be IA systems, not having a watershed permit will probably get a faster implementation than having a watershed permit that, in effect, puts the enforcement on the town. So instead of DEP enforcing that people didn't have, if we have a watershed permit that says this is gonna happen in 5 years or 7 years, who's responsible? And if the person doesn't want to do it, or they says it's not right, who are they gonna sue? So it's kind of like, I'm not clear yet on what doing a watershed permit would accomplish, other than slow down the implementation.
Well, it allows us to make the rules. If you don't have a watershed permit, you have to go by what DEP says.
Right.
Right.
If we have a watershed permit and we say, okay, so anybody within 500 feet of the water or has a cesspool, they have 5 years. Anybody with 1,000 to 1,500 feet has the next 5 years.
Right,
And
and who's
so
then gonna be
so the
responsible for
process-
that enforcement?
I'm sorry?
Who's then gonna be responsible for that enforcement?
Board of Health.
Board of Health, yeah.
Right. So,
I went to an all-day conference on this.
okay.
Yeah, I think I might have been the only person from Bourne. No, Aaron Perry was there. But anyway, so I met the guy who runs DEP, and I talked to him and whatever.
Which guy?
Langdon. I'll get you his name. Anyway, it's on. I did a Facebook post. It's on there. Anyway, so one of the reasons to have a watershed permit is there are so many alternatives coming down the line that will be approved in time that may be far less expensive. So that's one of the reasons to go for a watershed permit. And I guess that's the thing. They had so many different alternatives, and I have some great ideas we can talk about after this. But
So,
That's-
but if you don't go with a watershed permit and the state says you have 5 years,
right,
and that's not 5 years for the 500 feet people or the cesspool people.
Yeah, but
That's 5 years for everybody.
everybody.
Yeah, but the town of Board of Health can set regulations for the 500 feet, for the 1,000 feet. We can set our own regulations requiring that are that would be enforceable by the Board of Health.
But that's if we get a
No, we can do
watershed
that.
permit.
No, we can set our own regulations. We
Either
don't.
way, yeah.
Remember Stanley said this before when we talked about this.
Why can't we get him back?
Oh, don't go.
I know, that's not a,
But setting our own policies may not meet the regulatory standards. Because, you talk about new construction having an IA system.
Right.
Well, if it's not in one of those areas, then it's not gonna count towards it, it's not gonna help with denitrification. My experience with the IA systems, and I've installed more than a few, is, it's not just that install, it's the ongoing cost to that resident.
Right.
And in some towns, they would do the first annual inspection. If everything was fine, they discontinued the maintenance and inspection contracts, which can be about $3,000 a year.
Yeah, well, we're looking for the county to start, kind of pick that up, because they'll be everywhere, so that makes sense to do.
And then, of
Yeah,
course,
well, let's go to that responsible management entity
Right.
that the county is looking at doing. And there is information in this plan that talks about, the first time that they put numbers in the plan, they put capital costs and operating costs sort of lumped together into like what it was gonna cost. But then we had them separated out. What's the capital cost of doing IA systems, and what's the maintenance cost of doing IA systems? What's the capital cost of doing sewering? What's the ongoing maintenance of having a sewer system? And it kind of, when you look at and I'm gonna get this CWMP up so I can actually refer to it.
Sewering is more expensive in every way.
Oh, yeah.
but it may be more equitable for the residents.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure that it's more expensive
I think I'm
either.
gonna agree with you here.
Why? It's like
Well-
$100,000.
If you look at the figures that we have in here, and I wanted to back up and ask, can I ask a question first?
Sure.
What, and I apologize if you all know this.
But this
What-
is good, because
yeah.
we need to
So-
get some of these questions back out.
If 14 other communities on the Cape have said, we're gonna go to sewer, what makes Bourne different from them?
We only have 1.5 watersheds that have high TMDL. Others have, well, Falmouth has 13, Mashpee has a whole bunch, so we're lucky. We don't have as big a problem as other people do.
but the TMDLs for Pocasset Harbor, Hen Cove, Red Brook are all going to be coming in 2026 at the latest. They're all,
Okay, all right, so the reason is not, there's multiple reasons. Number one, we're split by a canal, right? So
sure.
that divides the town, and you have to separate out north side versus south side for sewering. The second thing is the fact that we do not have a lot of watersheds with identified TMDLs. As a matter of fact, we have several watersheds, being like Buzzards Bay and the canal and Cape Cod Bay, that aren't even listed as being impaired. I mean, these aren't even impaired watersheds. So when you look at what's happening in Falmouth, which has, I think they actually have 16 watersheds, I could be, but,
maybe now.
and shared watersheds with Mashpee
And us.
and much more density of development. Even Sandwich has more density of development. So there's a lot of Sandwich that's quarter-acre lots. We have some areas of dense development, like around Hen Cove or, some of the older sections. But a lot of our development is R40 and R80. And so trying to sewer out in, Wings Neck where it's like 2-acre lots, or even, so then you could do smaller, package treatment plants, but they're so expensive that, look, the cost of the wastewater treatment plant that ended up costing us $9 million instead of $6 million. And the costs of operating it are way more than what they said. Then whether that's a viable alternative as a cost-effective solution is a different question.
Does the sewer system take out a greater number of nitrates than any of these AI systems?
So the general use IA system in the calculations is removing 19 milligrams of nitrogen. There are some general use IA systems that reduce to 10. There are some wastewater treatment plants that reduce to 10. There are some that reduce to 5. There are some that do 3. The Wareham plant is very efficient. It brings the nitrogen down to 3 milligrams. In contrast to the Mass Maritime, which removes no nitrogen.
Which is one of my questions, because that drives me crazy.
The residential IA systems I'm familiar with, BioClear's fast
Yeah.
system and so forth, is basically an aerator.
Right.
It has a honeycomb insert and an air pump, and that's it. And it just aerates and allows it into the air. So it's not a complex system, and yet, the numbers you're talking about for installation have been grossly exaggerated, and that's probably because the professionals in the industry don't have time to take it on. If you went to Bracken, they're telling people, we'll talk to you in November about an appointment in the coming year. And I've talked with Churchill and Flaherty and Plymouth and, 4 others, and they're all in the same position. So I agree with you. If all the other towns are doing sewer, I forget the marina's name in Wareham that did their field that they could allow some of the residents in the neighborhood to
Yeah.
attach to. If we only have a few areas that need this significant reduction in nitrates, then maybe we should be focusing on how can we make that more affordable.
My concern financially, and you mentioned it, so I'm picking up on that, is that if we look at the potential of the 3,900 houses that this report refers to, you're looking at $195 million based on their figure of 53,000, I'm sorry, 53,000 per setup.
For sewer or IA?
IA.
Yeah, I'm making the
Very
comparison.
high.
Yeah.
So I'm really concerned about our residents getting stuck with $53,000 bills, especially the elderly people that have been in their houses for a long time. And a lot of these are the ones down in those areas, they've been there for a long time. So that, a lot of people can't come up with $53,000.
And they won't have to. There's all sorts of money for this.
It'll still be an obligation, right?
There'll be some, but there's,
Won't be
you know,
53,000.
it won't be anywhere near that.
No.
There's a whole variety of places where we're gonna get money from.
But those are the real numbers that we have to use and the people are gonna talk about. I mean, those are the real numbers that are gonna come before the finance committee. The real numbers that are gonna come before, town
They
meeting.
gave them a 53,000.
That's what they estimated,
It's right in
and
the,
they
it's right in the
say.
report. They put it right in.
That's what environmental partners
Yeah.
estimated.
Right. Now-
But if you condense it all into 5 years, 53,000 is gone, because there's just not enough people to do it in 5 years.
Right,
I,
that's the
I,
bigger
I
problem.
just had a friend who had to replace his, and it cost him $50,000
We're about,
in another town.
Well, and what was he replacing?
The
Was he
entire system?
replacing the leaching field? Was he, I don't know what
I'm
was.
not sure.
I mean, if he had a failed leaching field and he had to replace his whole system in a whole new area of his, then it is like,
And then it's-
I've done a whole system in the last 3 years for about $15,000.
yeah.
IA,
Yeah.
Yeah,
15
IA should-
micrograms per liter.
Yeah, I go out to the rep's warehouse in Raynham and pick up the materials, and my excavator has to buy a tank with a rectangular hole in it instead of the traditional round.
Yeah,
And he has to run Schedule 40 pipe for 30 feet to an in-ground air pump that's in a green plastic vault.
yeah.
And attach a panel to your shed or your house that basically tells you if it's running.
Right.
It's a very simple, inexpensive system.
Yep.
Very simple.
But how,
General use approved?
I'm sorry?
Is it general use approved by Mass DEP?
Yes. It's BioClear's fast system.
Okay,
Probably the
yeah.
most common
Yeah.
in this area.
It's less than $20,000. That's what,
Yeah.
it should-
Yeah.
yes, should be less than 20,000.
Yeah.
And so
That's
that
for
was
a
one
Wouldn't
of,
go by those numbers, I really wouldn't.
that was one of the
But they
things.
put it in writing.
Yeah, they did, but they also did, it could be 50% less or 100% more. They did that on all of their things.
Right.
You know, we're not giving you hard numbers. And this, so when you talk about financing, like what are the options for financing? And this is where actually the watershed permit thing comes in. That for IA systems, to go on the SRF, the state revolving fund, they're saying that the town has to own the property. So you can't own the I mean, unless we get easements and own the property of everyone's front yard, that's not gonna be possible, even with a watershed permit. And so what Wareham did is they put in $3 million for SRF, and they're still working with DEP. It's for IA systems. They've got the funding, they were on the intended use plan. They haven't kind of figured out how they're gonna do it, so that's something we have to kind of watch. When I talked to Ryan Curley, he was, you know, we might buy the systems or give you, you know, say that we're gonna buy 300 systems and get the $3 million from SRF and then give you, you make a grant to the town of Bourne for replacing your system and we give you a piece of money. I mean, there's the state, the county septic loan program. If you have to replace your septic system, you could go to the state county loan program. And they have redone that program so that if you meet certain income requirements, it's 0% financing, and you can pay for it over a long period of time. The third piece is, and we were just able to get the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund to agree to pay 25% of the upgrade to the Wareham plant, which of 25% of Bourne's share of the upgrade. So our share of the upgrade is like 6 million, and they're gonna allow us to get 25% of that covered by the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. So that's another piece. If this is part of our plan and we file on the state revolving fund, we can get 25% of the cost paid by the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. How we're gonna finance it is somewhat of, it is a conversation we need to have and we need to understand. But we need to know what we're kind of gonna do before we try to figure out the financing of it.
I think this is gonna scare the hell out of the residents that have
Oh,
to
I
do
think
that.
so too.
We know.
And the other thing the other financing piece of it is what Sandwich and Mashpee did, is they reduced their CPA funds.
Yes.
They reduced their CPA 3% down to 2%, and then they add 1% for a wastewater infrastructure fund, which gives, and Sandwich is now upping that another percent to 3% as a surcharge. And so that is another pool of money. So there's a lot of ways that we could do it. I'm concerned, and I would say that Marlene is concerned about the enforcement of a watershed permit falling on the town. So a lot of what you're seeing in the Title V was the Conservation Law Foundation, first of all suing the Cape and then getting the 208 plan and this stuff, and then suing Mass DEP, and Mass DEP saying, okay, well, we're gonna put in these new Title V regulations and we're gonna make all the towns responsible, and they're gonna make all the towns responsible through watershed permits. So what does that mean? You know, if Conservation Law Foundation doesn't think you're moving fast enough, they're gonna start suing the individual towns. So whether a watershed permit is gonna, you know, we have to kind of do the pluses and minuses on a watershed permit, but first we gotta know what we're gonna do.
So if I could?
Yeah.
I just want to back up here. You're talking fast. So let's back up to this 3%.
Wastewater Infrastructure Fund?
Sure.
Yeah.
Would that be for a sewer project or
Or
to,
anything.
or to
Wastewater
reimburse
infrastructure.
individual people?
Wastewater infrastructure.
Me personally, I could strongly support that concept. As you all know, the permit requests that have been coming forward in the Preservation Fund have been causing a lot of anxiety at town meeting. And there's a real question on some of those proposals You know, it's not supposed to be for maintenance, ongoing maintenance of equipment or whatever. And I think some of the proposals that we've been given, yeah, it's real borderline. This should be in your capital budget. You should have planned for this. Why are you taking it out of preservation funds? So, I mean, I think the board, and I'm not speaking for the board, but I think that they would take a hard look at maybe adjusting and going along with that idea.
So I think at the
How do you
same time.
decide which resident gets the money?
Right. Well, if you do a sewer project, then everybody gets
Oh,
it.
obviously, that's a whole different story, but if we go IA only, then, and there's money available, how do we decide who gets the money?
Well, we'd have to make a decision tree about that. I mean, are there priority projects? I mean, CPA, it's an application process. You would have to apply for the
Apply for the
money.
money,
And
that's
make
all.
your process, and CPA has criteria about how they rate projects. So we could say closer to the water, you know, we could say this, you know, failed septic system,
Anybody with a
cesspool.
cesspool, right.
You know, these are our highest priorities, and this is the money we have available, and we just do it by application.
And who's gonna sue over that because they didn't get their money?
They might, but, you know, whatever.
Still seems like a small bite of $195 million. And, I mean,
All right, so let's talk about 195. Where's $195 million?
That figure is not in here. What I did was I took the 4,900 residents that they talked about changing over, and I used 50,000. I didn't use the 53,000, and just a couple of the round numbers.
Environmental Partners had run some numbers at a meeting regarding that. We had that joint meeting.
And was that close to?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was similar.
Now, did they come up with a solid number just to sue the town? Because I didn't see that in
No,
here.
there's no number for sewering.
But if
The
you look in
entire
this
town?
report, at each section, there's an alternative about
Yes.
sewering.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they talk about figures there. So the numbers are close. And I think that we'd get a better product if it was actually sewered and filtered, handled properly.
Right, it would probably be better, but it's gonna take a lot longer,
Sure.
a lot
Yeah.
longer.
And the costs over time are much more,
Yeah, because every year it goes up.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Well, there's
You
a
start
care of
with 3
maintenance.
million, and by the time you end up, it's 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what do you do with the effluent?
Right. Yeah, there you go.
What are they doing with it now?
Well-
Right now, it's groundwater discharge.
Yeah.
That's probably the way it would have to go.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that drove us away from sewer was the opposition to an outfall in the canal.
That's right.
That was really the biggest thing that drove us away. But if you look at Orleans, for example, Orleans is using, I forget exactly what it's called. It's an injection technology, a groundwater discharge injection technology that it's not a direct outfall, but it goes into the groundwater in a way that it comes out in the ocean way farther away. And one of the things that I attended a webinar about the marine fisheries around the New Bedford and Fairhaven plants and the restrictions around fishing and shellfishing and like what could be imposed. Having an outfall in the Cape Cod Canal could vastly affect fishing and shellfishing, like closures in this vicinity, so.
And beaches that are so close, and, I mean, there's
Yeah.
many reasons why not to.
I mean, I think there's good flow in the canal. I mean, one of the things about the wastewater treatment plant that we did put up with groundwater discharge, basically, it discharges through the ground to the canal, but it's not, it's not a concentrated.
Billions of
outflow.
gallons of recharge a day must,
And I will say that right now, all the towns on the Cape that are trying to sewer are getting held up at Mass DEP, not getting approval of their groundwater discharge permits. I mean, it's, that is, I mean, it's not a simple solution. And and I think the Title V regulations that said 2 years and 5 years, I think at the end of 5 years, they're gonna get extended to like 10 years.
Yeah, the DEP didn't want to do this, right? It was
No,
the
they were
lawsuit.
Well, it was
forced.
conservation law
It's a
that
blanket law.
forced their hand.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do, I have to say.
Oh, I agree.
No, there's
I
no
agree.
question
Have to
about
do it.
that.
But I do think that, from my experience with IA systems, there will be a huge amount of pushback. And if I were to put an IA system voluntarily into a new house that I was building and then market it, it would have a negative effect for,
On selling the house?
yes,
Why?
ongoing maintenance contracts, not understanding how simple the system is, thinking it's something more complex than it really is. Who's going to be doing the inspections? One of my own homes, I had one, and the inspectors from the group would just show up, block your driveway, and walk in while you were having guests in your backyard and open a sewer trap to.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
But at some point, the big picture has to be discussed. I mean, I live on Hen Cove. It's a disaster. How, you don't fix it by not doing anything. We have to do something.
yeah, that's why we're here. Yeah.
I mean, I can walk 20 or 30 feet out into Hen Cove and I'm in muck above my ankle bone. And if I keep going, it gets worse. And all that is because the oxygen is being taken away by the nitrogen.
Right.
I was a jewelry salesman. I don't know anything about this. But in 5 years, it's like smacking me in the side of the head. I'm like, how did we get to this point? So our little group, we had a meeting. The first year we had an annual meeting, Z. Crocker was our first speaker. And he started out with, just as we look around, this is all our fault. At pointing at everybody at the meeting, because we've been ignoring it. And, that can't, it drives me crazy how many cesspools I know how many houses have a cesspool.
But you know what, the cesspool versus the Title V makes no difference in nitrogen.
For Title V, right.
To let-
Yeah, but it does for other stuff.
Oh, yeah,
So-
but
so
for
here's-
nitrogen, they both just let nitrogen out.
Right.
Here's my question, and you just hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of systems out there that are failed and that nobody is following up on.
Correct.
And making them get it corrected now, which would help solve a lot of
Sure,
problems.
would be starting.
So, how do we do enforcement now, or is everybody waiting for some decision to be made on this?
Well, so one of the things that I think the Board of Health has to get involved in is what regulations they can put in place. If we say, all right, our comprehensive wastewater management plan is IA systems, okay, that's the way we're gonna go, and what regulations do we need to have for enforcement, and how do we wanna have it happen? The numbers are scary, but the numbers, when you look at the numbers in other towns on the Cape, they're really scary.
And there
I
are things
mean-
we can do in the meantime to help. Like, we're talking about stormwater management. We've talked about aquaculture, which is using oysters to filter things. There are, believe it or not, urine diverting toilets that cost far less.
Those aren't in our plan right now.
I know, but what I'm saying is all those things add up to helping the numbers so that we get our goal sooner. So that maybe the people that are up in, a mile away from the water don't have to do this, but the people who are near the water do. That's what I'm saying. So the number may not be nearly as big in the end.
I still maintain the sewer is a more equitable approach, and I think that's going to have a big effect on people's support or fight against it.
So sewering the high TMDL areas?
Well, that's how EPA got into the packaged treatment plant.
And they don't want them.
And people don't want to make that leap, but that's the ideal way to go.
Yeah, some changes have
I
to
worked for
occur.
EPA, and that's when I started, was treatment plants. And unfortunately, all the environmentalists want to move you towards this big giant sewer treatment plant. That's been the industry standard for
Yeah.
40 years now.
Well, it's like the ADUs that we did. I mean, things have changed, needs have changed, priorities have
Everything's
changed.
changed,
And now with
IA
this,
What
systems that are
figure-
improved now.
yeah,
What figure do they give you for the sewering per house? Sewering per household?
So,
They said
they did it by
they did it by
area.
watershed. So on this report, which is, I don't know,
Because I
whatever.
know Zeke Crocker told us it's 125,000 per house.
Yeah, he used Long Island as the example for that.
So Magansett, Squatigue, Harbor, the numbers that they used, and these are very, very, very conceptual numbers.
Yes.
Page 14.
Yeah, the total capital cost for the IA was 12 million, and for sewering was 13.8 million. The operation maintenance costs for IA systems was 681,000. The sewering was 961,000. And,
Do they do it per household?
well, you know what's weird?
No.
They did it differently. I mean, maybe they did something. What are they doing here? Because they're doing like a combination.
I think they were showing the different alternatives. If you do the IA system,
Oh, you need to do 285 parcels.
correct.
If you do sewering, you'll have to do 150
50.
parcels.
Right.
So it's a to be determined satellite location for the sewering.
Well, that number
Phineas
tells.
Harbor, I was really interested in the Phineas Harbor because they said sewering at the Bourne School's wastewater treatment plant.
It's free during the summer, right? And
Well,
that's
not
where the
only
highest-
that, right now it has a capacity of 39,000 gallons per day, and it's using about 8 or 9. So not only is it not used in the summer, but it's not operating at its capacity. And we're about to put $2 million into that plant because it's 20 years old, 25 years old, and
With
so
the
we
new
have to
grinders.
we have to put, we just did a capital, right? $2 million on top of 750,000 for the HVAC thing, which I don't even think they've done yet. But, so if we're improving a plant that has a leaching field in the Phineas Harbor that has a TMDL, like, that would seem to be where it's 436 parcels. Now, you do have to increase the capacity of that plant, because they're saying that would be 86,100,
Doubling it.
to meet the TMDL. So is that possible, and is there a plan? And they do have double trains, they do have an excess train there, so I don't know what's involved in doing that.
Is it uphill? Do you have to pump?
Probably, but, I mean, I'm assuming,
Not as far as the base.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, and there's, I mean, and from Phineas Harbor to the middle school is not, is not that.
No, it's not that bad.
And when you look at it, the cost is 37 million for the capital cost, right? 37.5 million, and the operating cost is 2.5 million versus 48 million for general use IAs and 2.7 million for operating maintenance. So exploring the use of the Bourne schools
Yeah, because it's existing.
for, as a
Treatment.
wastewater treatment plant alternative seems to me it's something we should be looking at.
Right, especially where they show that there's by only doing 436 parcels, it exceeds the estimate that they would have to do if they did individual sewers.
Exceeds
That's on
the
page 22.
The reduction in nitrates.
Yeah.
Right,
Estimate.
yep.
Well, and part of that's because they have to use the 19 milligrams for the general use, and you're probably gonna, most of the system, like the microfast, is gonna be better than that, but they will only use the 19. They won't give you the better thing, because that's their rule. So,
Whose rule? DEP?
DEP's rules or EP's rules.
But there's
or-
a sentence in the new Title V regulations that says.
Best available.
Best available technology.
Right.
So in my case, we've already hired Falmouth Engineering to work on our plan. So, I want to set the example. So, Mike Barcelli is a great guy, but he says, you can't do anything until that's defined. Because what if you do it now and it's just this, then 2 years from now, it's a different number?
Yeah.
Then what do you do? That needs to be defined early in the game, what the Bourne number is. And I get asked that question a lot.
What do you mean board number is for what?
Well, what are we going to have as our requirement? Is it gonna be 19 milligrams? Is it gonna be 15 milligrams? Is it gonna be 10?
What
Once
will
we
they
es-
allow?
I'm sorry?
What will they?
Right.
Allow
What will
from an
Bourne
IA?
allow, so that 3 years from now, when some genius comes up with a plan that takes out 8, then do I have to do mine over again? We need to set a number in Bourne.
Yeah, I
for
think
an-
you have
for
to set
IA.
regulations, because I'm pretty sure they put in a grandfather thing. If you put something in that meets a regulation at the time you put it in.
Is that
They're not
right?
gonna make you, yeah. They changed that, and there was some language that they did adapt in the regulations for that.
After the original, like July
Yes.
7th last year, or whatever.
No, after the original ones.
Okay, I'll check that.
Well, I found it very interesting in here that they said that there is no technology out there that meets the existing standard. Did you see that in here? I'll have to find
In
it.
a sense,
Well, they put it in writing. Just talking about their writing.
Where is it? Where is that?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
in a sense. And nobody's even taken into account, is the population is actually going down? Does that mean school systems are gonna be smaller? In some towns already, that's the case. So what do you do then? And we got a system that's functioning now with X number of, part of the year, with X number of pupils, but what if that drops by 10%? I mean, that means you got more capacity in your sewage treatment system. I mean, so, there's a lot, there's just.
But what happens if it goes the other way? Joint Base starts taking in, migrants.
Oh, well, there's another possibility
Yeah.
that nobody's
Oh, the
even,
Joint Base has their own system. We don't have to worry about that.
yeah,
But
that's
where do
So
they go
he's
to
talking
school?
about schools.
schools.
Actually, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, but it doesn't look like Bourne's gonna be the recipient
Of kids?
of the, it looks like from the initial plans that I've seen, that the Bourne land on the base is gonna be for base housing.
That's good.
That's nice.
And
With
that,
no machine gun range. I mean, that's like a win-win-win.
That's
Yeah.
a win-win-win, yeah.
And that it's over the same, it's all under mass development
Speculative,
and
yeah.
like, but, yeah, so, but
Still
that
think
is
we
something
need-
to be
We do
watered.
need workforce housing, though.
Yeah,
Another thing.
yep. Just
Right,
another-
but that's in the Sandwich. That's what they've been doing in Sandwich.
really?
Yes,
Oh.
not in Bourne.
Oh, I thought it was all in Bourne.
The location of the parcels, did you go to the open house that
Yeah.
they did?
Yeah, I thought it was all in Bourne.
Did you go to the open house at the night one? Yeah, so it was different in the day
I
one.
went to both.
I don't know.
All right.
On page 29, they talk about pilot and provisional IA on-site systems. And it says the best available nitrogen reducing technology remains at 10 MGL. There are no general use IA approved technologies which meet the 10 MGL nitrogen effluent efficiency.
Are they provisional? Because those are acceptable.
However, some pilot and provisional IA on-site systems have demonstrated below the 15.
But the interesting part of that is, if you go to the 37-page list of the systems on Mass DEP, it hasn't been updated since March of 2023.
Yeah,
Right.
So in 2 years, there's a lot of progress been made.
Sure.
But it's not official because they haven't updated their list.
But if we tell our residents that they have to do an upgrade, and then they read in a report, it doesn't meet the standards, it's gonna cost more than what it would cost to sewer, they're gonna say, what's going on?
right.
From going to this meeting, it was a pretty large conference, the DEP people want to work with us. So what about bringing some of them in to talk to us? Because we're gonna be, if we don't do the watershed, we're gonna be in a different place than everybody else, and they'd be very interested in helping us, or working with us.
Well-
Or if we are with everybody else on sewer, then we're with 14 other towns.
Right.
Fighting for.
For the money, yeah.
Discharge and pocket
Right, so in a
system.
way, going early
All
might
right,
be
so we're gonna, like, we've had some interesting discussion.
Sorry.
the comprehensive wastewater plan. And it appears to me that what I'm hearing is that there is still some sentiment by some members that we should be looking at sewer, at least in some areas.
Yeah,
Okay.
agree.
So one of the problems you run into is when you hire a consulting firm and they do a bunch of work and then they're running out of money, they think, all right, you told us you want to do IA systems, so we built this whole plan on IA systems. Now you want to go back and do this. You know, we might not have sufficient money. But let me talk to you about where the select board is. So the select board got this report, and this was this one from our meeting of June 4th. Was the second iteration, because we didn't like the way the numbers were presented in the first thing. There was nothing about sewering. And just this conversation shows that you have to have some information about sewering, or people are gonna say, why aren't you talking about sewering? Why aren't we doing it? So when this passed, since January or February, the select board started meeting in daytime workshops for marijuana, because in order to implement marijuana under the new cannabis control regulations, we needed to do a lot of stuff. They have a lot of regulations on your social equity policy, on your grading criteria, on a lot of other stuff. So we spent a lot of time doing that. It was very productive. And we are at a point now where Marlene is working on implementation, so she's gonna come up with the implementation plan on that in terms of what's the website look like, what does the application look like, what's the process. So we are sort of put that over to her, and now we're gonna take up in our wastewater, in our workshops, the comprehensive wastewater management plan. And, so on July 23rd and September 19th, the select board at 3 p.m., those are Tuesdays, I believe,
23rd and what, August 19th?
September 19th.
September
September
19th.
19th.
Our August, we have an August thing that's gonna be on, actually marijuana again. But, we're gonna do workshop meetings that are gonna be devoted to the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Because we're getting to the point where the select board has to say, this is the plan that we're gonna do. And so there are two ways that we could do this going forward. We could continue this committee, and this committee could attend those meetings and give feedback to the select board at those meetings. Or we could dissolve this committee and individual people could come and give feedback. And I'm fine with it either way. We have no more budget for environmental partners to come and make presentations to this committee. I did talk about Marlene, about having Mass DEP come to a meeting to talk to us. They did go to a meeting at the Board of Health. I also want to have the Board of Health come for a joint meeting, because having this discussion in a vacuum without the Board of Health and what regulations they're considering and how they want to go about doing it, because once you get out of sewering, it's not the select board, it's not the sewer commissioners, it's the Board of Health. They have their septic IA systems, those are their regulations. And we can say, this is our plan, but we have no control over what the Board of Health is gonna decide to do. So I'm trying to figure out logistically how this group interacts with this stage of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. And the next stage of this plan is for the select board to decide, this is what we're putting forward to Mass DEP and Cape Cod Commission for review, so that they can have their public meetings and then eventually go to town meeting. I'm not seeing this happening this fall, because there's a 47-day review period for Cape Cod Commission and Mass DEP, and there's not enough days to be able to do it and then get. But I also think that if we come up with a plan and have it go through that whole process, and then start talking about the wastewater infrastructure fund, because if we have some numbers and say to people, this is gonna cost us $100 million, and if you don't start establishing this wastewater infrastructure fund, you know where it's gonna come from. It's either gonna come from your pocket, or it's gonna come from, taxpayer increases, which is what everyone else has done for sewering. So, I'm open to thoughts.
It does seem that both pathways have a similar cost. Not exactly the same, but a similar cost. So I think that's enough information to
Yeah.
speak about, really theoretically, which direction is best for the residents. And maybe more equitable and more saleable at town meeting. But I just don't feel it's fair to have all these residents that just happen to be in those areas absorbing the cost, which we know, whether it's mass save incentives that the contractors just jack their price up and then they're the ones that wind up keeping them, or this whole system getting estimates on IA systems, which are now 3-4 times what it actually cost has been, it's not gonna work out for the residents. And those agencies or the CPA funds, which I was kind of hoping maybe the CPA could decide on a certain percentage towards affordable housing, and, there's other needs and priorities, but I just think it's a small bite, and without being able to assure residents that there's a fund that will cover the cost and get you a low interest or no interest 20-year that's transferable when you transfer title and so forth. But I also think that if we are talking about initiating at transfer of title, you'll have to now absorb the cost of a new system, is gonna be a real difficult thing for residents to
It's gonna
swallow.
kill them.
Well, it's actually already in place now. So real estate agents who are selling a property in an area with a TMDL, they have to disclose
Yep.
that property is in a nitrogen-sensitive area, and you may be required in the next 7 years to replace this system.
There's no real enforcement on that. The form does not require that it's signed by the buyer or that it's sent to the Board of Health or anything else. So
Good real estate, I know, because I was contacted by a real estate agent for a house that was going for sale on Scraggy Neck Road, like, up at the beginning, and she said, are they gonna be required? And I was like, well, and then I called back and I said, yep, if it's on the list, in our needs assessment list, if it's in that TMDL, that disclosure has to be made, and real estate agents are
Yeah.
making it, I don't think it needs to go to the town.
Well,
It's
they
a
don't wanna be held liable if they
disclosure.
don't.
there's
Yeah,
no
it's a
spot
disclosure
for a
that they
buyer
have to do,
signature on the
like-
form.
Like,
Well, I'm with Kinlan Grover Compass, and yeah, we have to get that. And I think that it gets signed, but I'll double check.
Yeah, I'm
It's a
been a
requirement.
broker for 20 years, and I've been watching that, and I've seen
they're
one
not
just
signed at
recently.
closing. I mean, if your lawyer's not having you, like, having that disclosure, I mean, maybe,
It's agents, it's not the
Yeah.
lawyers, yeah.
So I just want to go back to sewering, because, if it's going to be an option, we need to understand what the logistics are of doing it.
Right.
So, I'm selfish. I live in my area and I'm worried about it. So if you just took Mo Beach, Pocasset, and Katomet,
Okay.
each one of those logistically needs its own treatment plant. How are you gonna connect them?
well, you wouldn't.
So you're gonna build one plant and connect all 3 villages to a plant?
Probably in the end, that's what you'll.
Well, we talked about Finney's Harbor.
Yeah.
We talked about
Mo
Finney's
Beach,
Harbor,
yeah.
Mo Beach, connecting to the existing
School system.
school
Okay, but
plant.
that's just right up the street.
Right.
Right.
So then the question is, I mean, that's a good connection.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you have to sewer all, like, so just because you say we're gonna sewer some areas, doesn't mean you're gonna sewer all areas.
But you have to have a treatment plant if you're gonna sewer,
You have to have a treatment plant for the areas you're going to sewer.
okay?
So, and let's take Wings Neck. I would not be inclined to sewer Wings
Wings
Neck,
Neck.
because it's too far, it's too
Yeah,
long.
Density.
I mean, you're paying
Geography.
they're all too far
in
apart.
geography, and I wouldn't want a sewer, I mean, Scraggy Neck, you could, except for there's very little of Scraggy Neck that's actually in an impaired impaired watershed. My house is the last one in the impaired area, so.
What you do wrong?
I'm at the top of the hill that goes that way.
Okay.
But my next door neighbor, where it used to be my parents' house, all the, like, let me get my directions right, west towards Marion, all that's in the Buzzards Bay watershed, none of it has to be changed. Not even close.
Would you be open to having a presentation with the people from Falmouth that are looking to do alternative systems? It costs under $10,000.
Your diversion? No,
Yeah. Why?
I'm not interested.
It takes out 100% of the nitrogen. It costs under $10,000.
Yeah, but no one wants to do it.
Well, they're starting to.
But
they're
I don't
starting
think
to,
people
and that-
understand it.
Right, and they have systems now.
It's
that
not
are
anything
flush
I'm gonna,
toilets.
it's not anything I'm gonna be interested in now, and understand that a comprehensive wastewater management plan
I know, it's
is
too
not
much.
a permanent plan. It's,
Right.
you have to review it every 5 years, and so if you come up with you're gonna go to town meeting with a plan, and it's basically gonna be a 5-year plan.
All right.
And then, in 5 years, if Falmouth is successful in implementing that, how would we do it? I can't even figure out how I'm gonna do IAs or, like,
Right, but this is much less. That's why I'm bringing it up.
But if we have the option of developing a 20-year plan,
right.
why can't we spread out different areas, even if we want to sewer them over that 20-year period?
We could, and we could do that without it, we can do that we are doing that in our comprehensive management plan. It lays out 20 years.
Right.
It lays out 20 years with watershed permit, and it lays out 20 years without watershed permit.
So,
The only difference is,
Responsibility for enforcement, right?
All right.
is responsibility for enforcement and some areas that don't have an assigned TMDL might be done earlier, and some of the ones that do have an assigned TMDL get done later. So, I mean, it is in there.
As soon as we talk about sewer, we have to go to watershed permit, correct? We can't sewer fast enough, am I right?
If you're going to sewer an area, you would do a watershed permit for that area,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But Marlene kind of says, we need to know what our plan is before we decide watershed permit or not. Really, if we're gonna do, because if you're gonna do IA systems, the decision to have a watershed permit is a different decision than if you're gonna do sewering. Because if you're gonna do sewering, it totally makes sense. So,
Still think that urine diversion could be something like you were talking about for an area where people want to do something. Get the dual drain toilet, flush toilet, and the tight tank,
Yeah.
and once a year you're,
it's always an option.
yeah.
It's, compost
Voluntarily,
toilets are an
yeah.
option. There's people that have them, right? I mean, and they
Composting
love them.
toilet, I've been to one.
I told my
At the
son
door.
that he should do it in his,
Rep for the first one in the US.
Come
Wow,
on, really?
wow.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say that here we are trying to fight nitrogen and it's costing people, thousands and thousands of dollars, and yet Mass Maritime is dumping every day.
well, they have a
100%.
permit to do it.
I know, that's really, it's.
They have a permit to do it,
incomprehensible.
and the letter that the Board of Selectmen wrote about that permit was never submitted.
From whom?
Why?
I don't know, it was before Marlene. It was our prior assistant town administrator who said, yeah, I'm submitting it, and it never got submitted, so it was not in the record. So, all right.
What are we just a
So
couple of
here's,
questions.
so before, I have to, 4:30 meeting,
Okay.
so I'm gonna have to, so, do you all wanna get reappointed and come to joint select board meetings? I am sort of hesitant to have separate meetings that create minutes and a lot of stuff where there's not a whole discussion. But if you think it's valuable, we can talk about it. Or do you wanna just continue to come as individual citizens? Totally up to you.
If we have more to say as a board.
I,
It makes more of an impact if we we all vote to do this or say that. That's much better than me saying it or you saying it.
Okay, so I'm okay with that. My plan is then to have this committee scheduled for the joint select board meeting on 7/23 at 3 PM to attend that meeting, right?
Here?
Yeah, I
Most
assume it's
likely,
here,
okay.
yeah. There'll be an agenda.
Okay.
And then if there's feedback from that meeting, if you want to then have a follow-up meeting and discuss any recommendations you want to make formally, you're not going to really be able to vote at the select board meeting. It'll be posted for your meeting, and you might be able to take some votes, but I think feedback is going to have to be a follow-up meeting. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay,
And we need to get a Board of Health member.
really?
Without a doubt, no
Yeah,
question.
I was upset that there isn't a person here now. I was
How many, there are 4
disappointed.
people on the Board of Health now? How many people?
There's 5 people on the Board of Health.
Oh,
There were 2 people were write-ins.
oh, they did, okay.
Dr. Prieto, and a woman who's an RN is on the board. Dusty's still on the board, Barbara's still on the board, and, who's the other person on the board?
Gene, your board?
No,
Select
no,
board?
no, no, Board of Health.
Oh,
Dusty, Barbara,
And the 2 write-in people.
Bob Collette.
Okay.
So he's the one that works for the county. He's the tobacco guy for the county. All right. So if you're all interested,
yes.
yeah, and getting
23rd at 3
reappointed,
PM.
yeah, and you may get an email like asking, I don't think you got emails asking if you wanted to be reappointed.
I did.
Yes, I did.
Okay, did you all say yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I don't know, the finance committee may need to like continue your appointment or something, vote your appointment, but,
Need continuity.
yeah.
Has there been any talk about an intermunicipal agreement with Falmouth at McGann-Squetig?
We have discussed with them, what they're doing, and they have filed a watershed permit,
Right.
but I don't know what they're doing there.
Okay.
So I don't know what kind of intermunicipal, we have had meetings with them. I don't know whether whether it would be practical to, if they did a North Falmouth, some kind of wastewater plant. I don't know if it would be practical to connect to that.
Okay.
Well, North
And the
North
McGann-
Falmouth has a plant.
Yeah, but it would have to be expanded in
Yeah,
order
it's
to.
not, yeah, it's only
not.
for a few homes.
But,
Really?
really, McGann-Squetig
Yeah, It
is,
took them 12 years to do it, but they have it.
Wow.
McGann-Squetig is like only 285 parcels. And that might be a section where you say, yeah, they're IAs, and Finney's Harbor, we're gonna connect to you don't have to have the same solution. And
Right.
Wellfleet's a good example of that. They have IA system sections, they have package treatment sections, they have sewer sections.
Well,
I
we could
mean,
have package treatment
Yeah.
sections, but you gotta sell that to those
Have we-
sections.
Has the town does a community by community or watershed by watershed survey of the residents of what they would like to do?
No. We've had some public meetings, but we haven't really, and there will be a public meeting though. So that's one of the things, that part of the DEP review and the Cape Cod Commission review is, having a public hearing. And that we need to advertise and actually get people interested in,
I mean, what I'm
because,
thinking is if we have one large community that really needs to get done and their residents say, we're willing to put up the money, let's do AI, or they come back and they say, no, we really want to hook up to the sewer system, then the town has some direction of alternatives that we can look at for that particular area.
But there's gonna be questions about cost and time frame, and, if you're gonna ask the question, that you have to be ready to answer all the questions.
I think that's what we need to know before we decide which permit we're gonna
yeah.
apply for. So maybe just pulling that information together.
Yeah, and I think, I think we're at a point now where I'm looking at this, and Marlene couldn't be here today. This was like a long ago planned vacation week for her, but we want to make sure we do the minutes before, because we haven't had any, we've got to get the minutes done.
Oh, yeah, you do that.
And that was, I was like, I've got to make sure that we get minutes done. So it would be helpful, because my understanding of what a comprehensive wastewater management plan is, it's a broad plan that sort of lays out a broad concept. And then, once you have that broad concept, you start like looking at different pieces of it, and it gets changed. I mean, like really, it has to be reviewed every 5 years. And if you look at the current comprehensive wastewater management plan that Falmouth has versus what they had 10 years ago, it's totally different.
Sure.
So you can't get too hung up in, you need something to start with and a way to understand. And I really want to understand the watershed permit thing better, because and I want to understand the enforcement better.
Which is why I think we need the DEP to come and talk to
Yeah,
us.
well, yeah, but I said we were gonna ask them to a select board meeting.
Oh, okay, not to
Yeah,
us.
no.
Okay.
To one of these two meetings?
I think we're gonna try, yeah.
Good,
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yep.
First question is, when are you gonna update your list?
They
March
won't,
of,
I bet you they
March
won't
of
answer that.
23. Don't rush into it.
Well, essentially, since the regulations are kicking in July 6th, right? And that's probably why they want us to get a watershed permit, so that they don't have to update their regulations.
Nobody has
They don't
any,
have to
nobody
update their
has
list,
any
it doesn't
sense
apply.
of where Haley stands on this issue, right?
Okay. I realize that not everyone has been at all of these meetings. And I also realize that we have people on Zoom. Are you guys on Zoom still there? Because technically, we're supposed to have a,
Chris says he's still there.
okay. So, there's Zoom participants, so we need to have roll calls. So, did anyone have any concerns about any of the minutes that were sent?
No. I've been to most of the meetings.
I've been to all of them.
I thought it was, they're all fine.
Yeah, I mean, so this is my suggestion, that we have one motion for all of these minutes that gets approved by those people who are comfortable with approving them as having been by the minutes, and people who feel that they don't want to approve them or weren't there, then they can just abstain. So if we will have so many in favor and
Okay.
so many abstentions. Does that sound like a plan?
It's only my second meeting, so I'll have to abstain.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Me too.
Oh, bring Elmer back, wasn't he? Elmer was here in the beginning.
yeah.
Elmer was the planning board originally, right?
Yeah,
We've
in
been
the
doing
very
this for a
beginning.
while, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So we had
And Jim
Stanley for a
Sullivan was the
long time.
finance committee.
Sullivan was,
Yep, Jim Sullivan.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 1st, 2022, April 11th, 2022, April 25th, 2022, June 22nd, 2022, July 13th, 2022, October 26th, 2022, November 9th, 2024, and March 26th, 2024?
I make a motion that we approve all the minutes just listed by MJ.
And I second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? So it's a roll.
Is that all our meetings? Because it seemed like we had a lot more than that.
That's all the meetings that I could find on the list of meetings for agendas. Some of the meetings we had that were public meetings were not posted as wastewater advisory
Okay.
committee meetings.
All right.
And there was another meeting that wasn't posted, and then, so I believe that's all I could find. And
Wow,
if they,
okay.
It's
Good enough.
yeah. And most of these I got from Chris, and he was pretty good about it. The only one he didn't, I did like January 9th, I think, and he wasn't at the October 26th one in 2022, so I think they're pretty solid. Okay, so it's roll call. So, Chris, can you vote? Yes? Chris, yes.
Chris votes yes.
Neil, are you there?
Neil?
Keith?
I vote yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
MJ, yes. Peter,
Yes.
Wayne,
Okay, I approve January 9th, and I abstain on all others.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
So that's 1, 2, 3, we have 5 votes.
can you just abstain?
Sure.
John? You don't have to approve them. So, that's
5-0.
502. And, Neil had left the meeting. Okay. So the next meeting date I have is July 23rd, 2024,
At 3 PM.
at 3 PM, and that's to attend the Select Board joint meeting. And then we can figure out a meeting schedule after that as we deem it necessary. What's today? Tuesday.
The 25th.
Is Tuesday afternoons, is this time okay for you guys?
Works
Yeah.
for me.
Is that-
Yeah, it's okay.
I,
Work around.
What's the 23rd? Is that a Tuesday also?
yeah, I'm pretty sure it is,
Tuesday.
because, yeah,
I'm
because
looking at it right here
we,
now.
we put them on a non-meeting night Tuesday for a workshop.
Okay.
But it is a Tuesday. It's easier for me to do it on a Tuesday because it's tough in the sense that I'll have a bunch of meetings on a Tuesday, but, yeah, okay.
Just means I have to play golf earlier in the morning.
Tough life.
And I can do it a little bit later if there isn't a trustees of the community building meeting, but, that means at 4:30, so I have to kind of,
I may have a conflict on the 23rd, but I need my calendar to check that.
okay. And there'll be a Zoom option and,
Okay.
whatever. Okay, so, is there anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do this, we're very formal here.
Okay.
Keith, Yes.
I vote yes to adjourn.
Kathy?
Yes.
MJ, yes. Peter?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And
Chris.
Chris, yes.
Just saying yes. Yep.
Okay. 700. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.